Hi, welcome along to this ultimate guide for absolutely everything in the media and film department. Today we're going to start with DSLRs, and in front of me I have the 5 DSLRs we've got. But I've run out of hands, so I'll only hold 2. So the first one and the oldest one we've got is the 550D, which looks a little bit like this. As you can see from here, really nice, simple, straightforward camera. You've got your shutter button in the very conventional place just there. And on the back, you've got a screen. It doesn't flip out. It doesn't do anything really exciting. It's just there. Battery lives underneath, just underneath the cap in there. It uses one of the old classic grey batteries. And on the side here, you can also have an SD card slot, which just simply goes in the right-hand side here. Now, across the top on the 550Ds, you've simply got an on-off switch. You can guess what that one does. And also you've got your mode selection wheel here. So if you spin it all the way to the right hand side with a little film camera icon, you'll be on filming mode. If you spin it all the way around the other way to M, you'll be on the manual photography mode. The main buttons to remember on this camera is obviously of course your shutter button to actually take photos. This scrolly selection wheel here. Now if you just spin this wheel on its own, it will just change your shutter speed. If you press and hold the AV button on the back, so the one that says aperture value, you press and hold that and scroll that will control the aperture of your lens. Obviously that's dictated by what your lens actually gives you. And then your ISO button on the top here, you press it once, you scroll the selection scroll wheel to pick what ISO you want, and you press it once more to set it. Simple as that really. On the back as well, you've got this button here with a little red record next to it. So what that basically means is you press that once, it will start recording, press it once, it will stop. Relatively quite straightforward. If you want to change things like white balance, if you're in photography mode, the little WB button here on the back, which is also the up arrow, or if you're in filming mode, you can press Q and then use these little directional pads here to navigate around the screen. Now, on the left-hand side, you might notice there's this little rubber ring, which you can peel off. On the top slot, you've got a microphone port. So obviously, of course, you can plug like a Rode video mic into that. You've also got a HDMI output as well as a USB. So if you want to use this as a card reader and take the things off your SD card using the camera, you absolutely can. And then, of course, on the back, you've just got your viewfinder and, like I said, a non-mobile screen. On the bottom, like always, you've got your tripod / shoulder mount / quarter-inch thread that you just simply screw into whatever you like. And this is your default camera. Now, on the front of all the cameras, all the Canon range are basically the same. You just twist this little dial here, and then you've got your sensor, which hides away in there, which you can see from this angle above. To take on and off lenses, you just press this little button here, press and hold that, and you can twist your lenses on and off. And then you just basically have a look at that little red dot or white circle on the top. And that is the 550D. So that's the first one in the Canon range. I'll move him over there. Next up is the 600D, which is the slightly updated version. The reason it's updated is because it's got a slightly better scrolly wheel on the top, and it's got an articulating screen. How exciting. So you can do selfies with this if you really want. I would not recommend it. It will look a bit lame. But otherwise, everything is in basically the same place. So SD card slot on the right, battery on the bottom. All the buttons are in the exactly same place and labeled exactly the same. You've also got display now lives up here. Instead of on the back, and you get an info button which basically tells you what settings you're using. On the left hand side, they've split that one big rubber chunk to 2, so microphone now lives under this little smaller hatch here. Again, exactly the same port, and you screw your microphone on the top. Otherwise, the camera is basically identical. The sensor is a tiny bit better, so you can cope with slightly higher numbers of ISO, but only marginally better than a 550D. Now, if we go up from our 600, we then get this boy, the 700D. Ooh, exciting. So what have they changed with this one? Updated scrolly wheel that can scroll all the way around and it doesn't stop. You've also got a dedicated film mode button where you basically just flick the on switch one step further to enter filming mode, and if you just have it on, you'll be in photography mode. So make sure you set this wheel to M for manual, and then obviously if you're on, you're in photos, and if you go all the way to the top, you are then in filming mode. Otherwise, you've still got the articulated screen. Hurrah! Good inclusion by Canon there. You still got the microphone port on the side. Basically, the body's unchanged, except all the buttons are circular now, and weird, like kind of smoother shapes. So it's a bit hard. Sometimes it can be a bit harder to find what the button is, but otherwise everything is basically in the same place. So aperture value on the back for AV. ISO button now has got a little kind of like dome to it, so you can feel out a bit easier. And also you've got your selection scroll wheel on the top. Otherwise, completely unchanged. Quite a nice camera. Again, a slightly more improved sensor hiding away inside there, so again can cope with slightly higher ISO. The next one up in the range, which is actually weirdly the newest camera we've got, is the 200D, which looks a little bit like this. So the 200D takes away quite a lot of the buttons, but also adds some extra functionality as well. So you have a bigger fold-out screen, which is now also touch screen. So you can press on this to change all the settings if you like. And also the screen itself is a bit bigger. The body as well, as you can see, is a little bit smaller. So it's a bit lighter in the hand, a little bit nicer to hold. They've simplified the menu system on the top. So again, you've still got your M for manual mode, but they've taken away quite a lot of the other extra symbols to hopefully aid with unconfusing you. The selection scroll on the top is now much higher quality and much nicer to hold in the hand. Again, the shutter button's in the exact same place. And similar to the 700D, instead of flicking the on switch continually up, you can flick it all the way around just using this little dial here, all the way to the film camera icon to film, or on if you're just taking photos. As you can see, they've kind of rounded everything off. You've now got HDMI and your USB port on the right hand side and your microphone port on the left hand side. But you'll be asking, where on earth does the SD card slot go? So the 200D uses a totally different battery and it lives all underneath here. So you've got your SD card and your battery slot all underneath at the bottom. But you do still have the 1/4" thread, so you can obviously attach it to shoulder mounts, fig rigs, tripods, whatever on earth you like. And of course the filming button is exactly in the same place, which is quite nice. So you still got your AV button to control your aperture. You still have your ISO button on the top there with the little notch on it so you can spot it with just your fingers. And of course you've got your selection scroll wheel there as well. But as you can see, a slightly smaller body. Now, the kind of biggest camera we've got in our range here that you can borrow and take out on the regular is the 70D. So it's the next series up from Canon, and you've basically got on the left-hand side now is where your selection scroll wheel goes. And with this one, because it locks it into the selection, so you can't accidentally twist it, you press the button on the top to twist it first, then swing it around to M for manual. On-off switch is over here. So that has, of course, moved from the right-hand side because now you've got this lovely little screen on the top. And then on the back here that you can see, you've now got a red filming icon and you can flick this switch over to swap between photo mode and filming. And a start-stop button has replaced the little button with the red dot on it to start and stop filming. Now, the most other important change here, of course, the 70D also has a fully articulated screen, which is quite nice, and it's also touchscreen too. So exactly the same as a 200D, you can just press around on the back of the screen to use it. You can also use this screen on the top as well to change and alter your settings and see what you've got. Otherwise, if you want to do the old-fashioned way and use the buttons and everything to maneuver everything around, again, your shutter speed is controlled by your scroll wheel on its own. ISO button once, scroll wheel, ISO button again to fix it. And then you might notice on the back there is no AV button anymore. That's been replaced by this little asterisk here. Why? I don't know. Canon, if you can answer me, that would be grand. But otherwise, you press and hold that asterisk button there and you can scroll it round. But also, like I said, you can just press the button on the bottom for aperture and then use your fingers to control the aperture of your lens. Again, now the HDMI port has moved back to the left-hand side underneath these two little rubber hideaways here. And of course, you've got your microphone slot at the very top. SD card slot, exactly where it has always been on the right-hand side, apart from the 200D. And at the bottom, now you get a much bigger, chunkier battery. So the battery in the 70D will last a lot longer because it is physically bigger. So it'll hold a little bit more charge. Otherwise, the camera is obviously a lot heavier, a lot more chunky than its 200D brethren. But weirdly, the 200D actually performs slightly better. So the 200D can do 1080p 50 frames a second, so you can get half-speed slow-mo if that's what you're after. The 770D can only do that at 720p, so a little bit worse. But slightly better at photography, slightly less good at photography. So it's totally up to you what you want to use these cameras for and what they do. But essentially, that is your guide to all things Canon DSLR here at the Sixth Form College Farnborough. Hope you found that video useful. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe and watch all the other videos in the series. Coming up next, probably it's going to be a little bit about lenses. Who'd have thought? The next thing that goes along with the Canon cameras. See you then.